Welcome to the Sonic Truth Dynasty-focused fantasy football podcast. I'm Alan Seslowsky from RotoWire.com, along with Theo, Gremminger, and the Podfather. Today, guys, I want to answer, let's do a little AMA. We'll use Reddit. We do an AMA every week with our friends over at Reddit, but let's not limit it to that. We have a bunch of questions that rolled in over there, guys, but we're also going to take questions from the chat, from our YouTube channels, from our Twitter. So let us know any Dynasty-focused questions. And normally we just ignore the chat, guys, but today we're going to actually embrace and lift up the chat and get all their questions.
Yep, Player Profiler on Discord, Player Profiler on YouTube, Player Profiler, Dynasty AMA on Reddit. There's a lot of ways to get your questions into us, and we are just here to answer your questions, basically because we couldn't think of anything else to talk about. It is May. Justin Jefferson may hold out, though there's no way he will. It's not possible given the collective bargaining agreement. But now, thank you, Theo, for putting the link to the Reddit AMA in the chat on YouTube. Appreciate that. And let's kick it off. What is the first question? Drum roll, please.
Do you have a drum roll sound effect? First question is, what are your thoughts? By the way, this is why we don't do these questions anymore, because some of these questions are horrible. What are your thoughts on Calvin Ridley?
I answered this one already, and I take like a cautiously optimistic
You didn't answer it on the show.
Right. No,
Didn't answer it on the show. I answered it in the Reddit.
You should. You have to answer it in the Reddit because we can't guarantee the people on Reddit are going to be listening to the show. So we have to answer it. It's a lot of work for us. We have to answer it on the show. It's going to be answered live. It's going to be answered in the podcast. It's going to be answered on Reddit. We are answering questions everywhere.
And let's give him credit. It's from Jimmy's Back Foot. That's the handle that asked this question.
What Jimmy do you think that is? Do you think that's like Jimmy Connors? What Jimmy do you think that is?
Butler.
Jimmy Butler's Back Foot. What does that mean?
It's I don't know.
Like a fadeaway shot.
That's what I was thinking.
Your back
he's
foot.
good with the back foot fadeaway shot. That's his specialty, Jimmy Butler.
The young kids would say Jimmy Butler is like that, scoring the basketball.
So I was thinking there was Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Jimmy Connors.
Right.
I'm a tennis player, so I'm thinking of a back foot forehand, but there's also the back foot fadeaway jumper. That's great. That's great stuff. And there's also, the funny thing is, famously, Jimmy Garoppolo never throws from a stable platform. So he's often throwing from the back foot. That's how he has gotten some of his receivers hurt.
I'll get the question started. Before we take the Ridley one, Alan.
Yep.
I'll ask a question to Matt Kelly, the Podfather, and also Alan Seslowsky down in beautiful sunny Florida. When you say tennis, Matt, is that your way of saying you're actually playing pickleball, or are you a for real full court tennis guy, or are you playing the little half court every suburb pickleball? Okay. Clarify it.
The real tennis players out here loathe the pickleball players. Right? I think the pickleball players know that they're encroaching, right? They know that they're basically taking territory and consolidating territory with these courts. So they're just trying to be under the radar as possible, right? But the tennis players feel threatened. Like, we know that it's coming. We see the lines being drawn we know. Like, we can feel the shift, the geopolitical shift on the tennis courts, and we're lashing out. Like, I haven't lashed out yet, but there's going to be, I guarantee, I know this more than I know anything else that's true in the world, that every day there are feuds between tennis players and pickleball players. I know it. It's bubbling. I can feel it.
That's not. I mean, there's a pickleball channel now on some of those Freevee and Tubies and all those. Like, they have like full on 24/7 pickleball. But come on, tennis is actually growing in popularity. We're seeing it with
no,
stars.
I know, but we can't get courts.
Oh, I gotcha.
We can't get courts. We show up to play, and these people that are playing ping pong with a big ball are taking our courts up.
It's like the old George Carlin joke: ping pong played while standing on the table. All right, guys, when
you walk outside of Madison Square Garden, right there in Midtown Manhattan right now, there is the biggest pickleball specific gym you've ever seen, Alan. So I don't know, guys.
Oh, wait a second here. New York City. I lived in New York City.
Build your own courts. Stop converting tennis courts. There's plenty of tennis is a great sport, okay? And we don't want to be it's annoying to hear that sound, that tick tick tap 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 tick tick the whole time. The sound of tennis is a much more pure sounding sport. Yep. Where you have people that are actually doing athletic movement constantly, and the sound when you have a sweet forehand, like that sounds good. That is a pleasure to the eardrums. Pickleball is just annoying. I mean, I play pickleball. Like, okay, I'm in a pickleball league. Okay. I do play, but I play it knowing in my heart that what I'm playing is not a real sport.
So Matt is team pro pickleball. I mean, you just contradict yourself there, Matt. You are
I
pickleball.
Play because I have to. I play because I'm good at it, because tennis players are naturally good at pickleball. That's a fact. And a bunch of my friends are in a league and they want me to play because they know I'm good. And so of course I'll play and have fun with my friends. That's what I want to do, right? I'm here to do that. I'm not here to, make some ideological stand, right, about tennis versus pickleball. But generally, when I'm going to play tennis, which is my first love, and I see the courts taken up by these pickleball clowns, I get frustrated.
Yeah, it's just easier to play. That's, I'm sure, why it's there. Guys, let's get into our first question, though. The pickleball talk is fascinating. I like it, but I can already hear the people seething through the screen right here. What are our thoughts in Dynasty? We'll start with that, Theo. For Calvin Ridley, I want you specifically to talk about, is this a one-year play, a multi-year play, and what are your production expectations?
I think the contract sort of insulates this into a multi-year play, where he's going to have, there's really going to be hard for them to get out of Calvin Ridley a year from now. And I think he's actually a guy that you want right now, Alan, because he's wide receiver 47 on our friends at Keep Trade Cut among their wide receivers in terms of the market valuing him. And I think that's sort of reflective. You'll see in like the sort of the high stakes startups, ADP as well. So you're talking about a guy at wide receiver 47, finishes as wide receiver 18 last year in PPR, now goes to a situation where they're going to attempt to be extremely pass happy in Tennessee. And Callahan referenced him as a potentially in the chase role, if you want to go like for like in the Cincinnati offense. So they have a lot invested in Calvin Ridley. It's a big philosophical change offensively in Tennessee. Calvin Ridley is going to return value based on wide receiver 47. And last year, the Calvin Ridley fade from the Podfather was coming when he was being drafted as like wide receiver 12 in redraft.
Yeah, like the second round.
He was a second rounder last year in September and August.
Podfather, take a guess on Player Profiler where you guys have him ranked in Dynasty. Wide receiver what? Based on what Theo said, market's around 40, what'd you say, 45, Theo?
I would guess we're slightly ahead of that, but I don't have it open.
I'm saying you're not supposed to have it open. You're guessing. I have it open.
I think we have him at wide receiver 38.
You guys have him at 46 currently on neutral rankings, not on win now or,
that sounds about right. I only said 38 because I thought this was a trick question.
I did make it.
Matt, you would probably have him 68.
That is so picture perfect.
Yeah.
Just
want to know who you have him around?
Rank. That is exactly where he should be. And one of the big reasons why there's major quarterback uncertainty. This is the unreported fact of the offseason, is no one has expressed concerns about Will Levis. You just hear what Theo said. Theo was like, oh, this offense is going to be wide open. It's going to be... So everyone is focused on the shift away from the Derrick Henry-centric offense that they've brought in these satellite backs, which means it's going to spread them and shred them. Callahan and Pollard. And I agree. It's great. There is a huge Achilles heel here, which is Will Levis. And the risk that he is just bad. That is the risk. So we're talking about a guy that's about to turn 30, Calvin Ridley, and his offense could implode because who is behind Will Levis? Right? That's the big question.
Mason Rudolph,
who, by the way, played well at the end of last year. Let's not discount that. All right, real quick here.
So anyway, I would rather have a guy that's more than a year younger in Chris Godwin, a guy that's 2 years younger, who is the number one on his team, Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson, Christian Watson has more upside. Keenan Allen is just a much better player with a better quarterback. Amari Cooper, similar age, but has a much better track record and is the true number one with a better quarterback. You can go down the list of all these receivers that we have ahead of Calvin Ridley, and it's pretty clear why we had the only guy that I would actually argue we probably should have below Calvin Ridley, because I've been against this player from the beginning and have been fading him, and I don't in generally speaking, your early second round, late first round wide receivers, oh God, right? They get credit as being first round wide receivers when they're really not. Ricky Pearsall.
I knew you were going to say
so the one disagreement I have is, okay, officially, based on all the human inputs plus the majority of our dynasty rankings is algorithm powered by the lifetime value engine that we have here, the smartest machine in all of fantasy football, really. I would have him one notch higher. I would have, yes, it's wrong. I'm sorry. I said it was the most, it's not the best, most efficient ranking. I would have Ridley at wide receiver 45.
All right. Let's take a quick break here, guys. When we come back, our next question is about Kyren Williams and the news about his foot, and he'll be sitting out all of the OTAs. That right after these words.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly, especially now. It's Best Ball Mania season, baby! Best Ball Mania 5! I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems. But they have the NBA pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the offseason. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
Has Underdog adopted that tagline, Podfather?
They should. Don't you think?
Yes. And then it can even, draft your cock off, it can even take it to a whole nother level, depending on the audience they're trying to serve.
You draft your cock off.
Yeah. You're drafting so much, it just, boom, falls right off.
Okay. So you think that we should just go down the list of genitals?
Yes. I mean,
draft your taint off.
Brilliant.
Right?
Brilliant.
Draft your scrotum off.
Draft your nips off.
Draft your vagina off.
Yeah. Your uterus, your clitoris.
Draft your uterus off. That's it. I'm actually going to write an email right now to the Underdog people. We got it. No, we got it. We workshopped it live on their Dynasty Reddit AMA. We are now 13 minutes in, and we've answered one question we've answered, and we didn't really even answer it. We just sort of gave a, hey, our ranking is the best ranking answer.
All right, here's the next
which is
question.
Great. Dynasty rankings on PlayerProfiler. Go subscribe. But yes, we've got it. Thank you. We have the answer for the Underdog marketing people. Free advice. You're the best tagline. Go draft your uterus off.
Love it.
Matt,
Theo,
we have a Reddit question I want to throw out there that I thought was interesting.
By the way, I want to praise all the Reddit people for asking questions on May 22nd when there's absolutely nothing going on and the only news is fake news about Justin Jefferson's holdout. But there is this one other news item that we're going to get to. I swear we're going to get to this. I'm not going to play the games. We're not going to do this game like we did before. We are, by the way.
I teased the Kyren one. How is Theo jumping in? That's the
go Kyren. Go Kyren.
You got to let the host. You got to let the host, guys.
Yeah. We're not going to let Theo subvert you, Alan. Don't worry. And also, we are going to get to Brian Robinson.
Oh, that's coming up.
I haven't forgotten Brian Robinson. We're going to get to Kyren Williams. We're going to get to Brian Robinson. There is Kyren Williams news, right? If you haven't read it, there's this Kyren Williams news, and the people in the chat are already rolling their eyes. I even saw a downvote because they know what's coming. They know the victory lap is coming, and this has been the greatest offseason I've ever had. This has been it's really not. I can't explain it. How I've become the Nostradamus of fantasy. But we have news about Kyren Williams. Before we get to that, let's go to that question that Theo had.
Oh, am I okay? So
well,
this
by the way, the Brian Robinson. Theo, do you remember the Brian Robinson stuff? It actually carried over out of this podcast into the podcast that you and I did. People were asking about that. What was the Brian Robinson take on my podcast when you were on it?
We couldn't get away from it. It's going to just haunt us all off season. But I want to ask this one. This is from Reddit, and this question was asked by the Power Toad. Why does Matt Kelly call himself the Podfather when there already was a Podfather, Adam Curry, who actually invented podcasting?
They don't know who Adam Curry is, though,
because Adam
people.
Curry fucked up. Adam Curry might have called himself the Podfather at some point, but I think maybe someone else called him the Podfather as a form of reverence to someone who was one of the earliest podcasters. He didn't invent podcasting, but he certainly was one of the first podcasters out there. He didn't invent the RSS feed. Okay, here you go. Here you go. Can you see this? Can you see this? Okay.
Yeah,
this is from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. No one else can call themselves the Podfather in commerce, or I will sue them because I have it trademarked. No one else does. I am the Podfather. You have to defend your trademark. Even if someone out there starts calling themselves the Podfather, it's my responsibility to defend the trademark and sue them. And if I don't, then I am implicitly accepting that they are also now allowed to call themselves the Podfather into perpetuity. And by not trademarking it, by not defending the nickname, by not leaning into it, I don't believe that Adam Curry really calls himself the Podfather. He just is honored when people call him that. Well, I was called that, and then I leaned into it, and I made it my moniker, and I have marketed myself as that ever since. So, yes, Adam Curry, very good talker, very good presentation skills, also technically savvy to be one of the first podcasters in the history of the world. Bad at marketing, bad marketer, and a bad sort of a custodian of intellectual property. I just happen to be good at all of this. I'm great at all the things that Adam Curry's good at, but I'm also good at these other things. And that's why I'm the Podfather now, and legally no one else is allowed to be.
By the way, for those of you who are under 50, under 40, I'm going to tell you who Adam Curry was. There used to be this linear TV station called MTV where they actually played music videos, and Adam Curry was one of the original what they called VJs, video jockeys. He was the original host of MTV back in its prime in the 80s and 90s. All right, guys, Kyren Williams. With the news that Kyren Williams will not participate in OTAs, does this open up a buy low window for Kyren, or is it similar to what we saw with Puka last year? Buy high now because it's only going higher. With Blake Corum, I said.
I mean, it's not funny. I mean, foot injuries are. I've had a foot injury. Okay, foot injury is incredibly painful. You can't work out on it. It affects your life in a major way. It's not something to laugh at. It's not funny. Okay, these are professional athletes. They're putting their health at risk. This is his whole career. Like if he loses the functioning of his foot permanently, he has no career. He has no way to earn a living, and that's a tragedy. It's not something to laugh at. It's not funny. This isn't a funny thing. But the fact that this is the one guy that I've said has the most ridiculous ADP in my history in this business, and that he should be on every do not draft list in every format. And one of the reasons is because he's small and unathletic, he is more injury prone, right? So is Devon Achane, but at least Devon Achane can accelerate away from contact and collisions and get out of bounds. Kyren Williams can't even get out of bounds. He can't pass block. He's actually not the efficient receiver he was sold to be coming out of college. He just happened to get every touch because he was the only man standing on the Los Angeles Rams in their backfield at the second half of last year. And yet somehow his ADP has sustained even after the Blake Corum draft pick. It's been one of the more inexplicable ADPs of my lifetime. I think you guys would agree with this. Like where you thought Kyren Williams would go to kick off best ball season, where you thought he would go to kick off startup season, where he's going now, it never made any sense. And this was inevitable. This was not something that I want to happen. I'm not rooting for injuries. This is just a cold, hard, clinical fact of the sport of football and why you cannot trust the undersized, unathletic 6th-round pick that comes out of nowhere and then gets his ADP juiced up to the 2nd round the following year. That's the easiest fade ever. He's Justin Forsett. Get real.
Okay, I'll say this. If from a pure dynasty theory perspective, this is the time where if you have Blake Corum, you try to get a larger than normal trade completed with the Kyren Williams manager. Because now they have the feet. I'm floating him for if I got him in the 2nd round, I'm going to get at least 2 seconds. I'm going to try to get 2 seconds, if 2 superflex seconds. But I'll say this, Coach Speak Index, those guys do a great job, and those guys are also contributing to our world famous draft kit this year. The Coach Speak Index basically does a rating on whether coaches tell the truth or not, and they track it on injury news, on depth chart news. They're very sharp with it. They say that, okay, Sean McVay's exact statement is Kyren's good. He had a little foot issue that we're going to be smart with. He'll be ready to go for training camp. And Coach Speak Index says that McVay has a 90% reliability rating on injury coach speak. They expect that this is the truth. He will be ready for training camp. So your fade of Kyren Williams, it should not be a injury fade. It should be a what Matt's talking about. Can he sustain this sort of workload? I think that that's really my takeaway. I don't think this is anything significant foot-wise.
Well, there's the other ancillary element here that any injury increases your probability of yet another injury. So this could result in a setback at some point, and it also does increase the probability of future injuries. This is just another brick in the wall. That's all this is. This isn't the end of Kyren Williams, but it is another brick in the wall showing people what this asset is in fantasy football and how risky it is. And now if you go out and you draft him with premium draft capital, it's on you. It's officially now, after this news comes out, all the warning signals, all the smoke signals are out in the open. You are wide-eyed going out into your fantasy draft, pushing the button on this guy. That's on you.
All right. That's fair. I think that covers Kyren Williams. He's dropping a little bit. Just went 4.7 in the startup I was watching for a Superflex. That makes sense. Maybe even a little rich.
4.7 in a Superflex? Okay, look,
it's a little rich.
That is insane.
Rich. Yeah. He went ahead of Jalen Waddle.
Insane. You people are insane. You don't know what you're doing. I don't know who these people are. Right? I don't, and again, this happened I was talking to Adam Krautwurst on the Mind of Mansion show yesterday. Adam Krautwurst is super smart, right? And he had a very good reason why. He was like, listen, man, at some point, I got to start drafting Quentin Johnston last year. Like, if in seasonal leagues, if he's going to fall into the double-digit rounds, given what he could be if there's injuries, and there was, like, I had to, it didn't cost me anything. There were other guys I was going to drop anyway. I might as well draft a guy with this kind of upside. That's all fair. That's all fair. I'm not saying that a player is undraftable. Every player is draftable at the right ADP. It's just that this Kyren Williams draft pick right now, his Kyren Williams ADP, is so insane. It's so inefficient. It's so many rounds wrong. Okay? It's so many rounds wrong. Like, who is going to have more fantasy points for the rest of their career? Blake Corum or Kyren Williams?
Career? I mean, it's close. I would say that if I was setting the line, it would probably be Kyren Williams would be slightly favored.
I think Kyren Williams will have a fraction of Blake Corum's fantasy points for their career.
Yeah, that's what makes.
Do you know who Blake Corum is? I mean, what? There are so many running backs back through time that have had these 8-week stretches and never been heard from again. How many do I have to list?
Yeah, Theo said the Justin Forsett example. That was the James Robinson, I guess, would be another one recently.
C.J. Anderson. The list is so long. I mean, I'm not talking about guys that just made some noise and went away. I'm talking about guys that won leagues.
Yeah,
guys that were putting up like 20 fantasy points a game for an 8-week stretch and then faded away into obscurity. They were never anything. They were destined to never be anything. It's just they happen to be the guy that was left standing for an 8-week stretch on a particular team, right? When you go back and you zoom out and you go, well, what did this guy do in college? Why was he splitting carries in college with a guy that never made it in the NFL? That doesn't make sense. That was C.J. Anderson at Cal, and that was an inconvenient truth. And I remember doing the same thing, but I'm thinking back to Justin Forsett. I'm thinking back to C.J. Anderson, and I'm thinking back to all these times I was so right and the fantasy public was so wrong about these running backs. And I can't think of an example where the differential has been this tilted, where the fantasy public has been this wrong about a running back. I think it's the wrongest they've ever been about a running back. Is Kyren Williams the last 3 months.
Shall we move on, guys? I have another question. I have another question from Dynasty Reddit from Bomb Squad, who asks this is a very dynasty question. He's asking about our thoughts on Dontayvion Wicks, the second-year receiver who looked all right in Green Bay. They have a pretty crowded room there, Theo. Wicks seems to be like the dynasty darling. So is Wicks, if you can get a second-round pick for him, is this a strategy that you want to try to deploy, or is he a hold right now and maybe there's even more upside?
I think you can make an argument that he's a hold. This is a passing game that we're betting on big time. A second rounder, Alan, I'm probably going to do it just based on the value being offered.
Well, that's the iron price.
I was buying him for thirds in a couple of leagues this year.
Him or Troy Franklin? Wicks or Franklin?
Dontayvion Wicks.
Wicks.
I've already seen it on the field with Wicks, and I know Troy Franklin has this pathway, but we're talking about a elite quarterback in Jordan Love.
Well, here's my point. Theo, I want you to stay with this here, but we see Troy Franklin going at 210, 211, 212. So
that's fair.
If you said, oh my God, you can't get a second. If you prefer Wicks over Franklin, then you can get a second by that logic.
So Wicks it's an ultimate like risk reward play. The thing is though, I've seen Dontayvion Wicks in the Christian Watson role do very well and post spike weeks last year. And I think Dontayvion Wicks was a steal of where he was drafted in the NFL draft. I think if we redrafted the 2023 class, he probably goes in the 4th round, just based on what we saw on an NFL field. So the fact that he was a 6th round pick, the 6th round had a couple of solid guys last year, Trey Palmer, but Dontayvion Wicks was the one that impressed me the most. And again, it's like we assume Jayden Reed is going to be the most productive wide receiver. That's the best bet. But then after Jayden Reed, Christian Watson's had trouble staying on the field. Romeo Doubs has been like up and down. He's had some very nice moments. But again, Dontayvion Wicks flashed enough that I want to take some shots on him. I took him at the 1401 of a dynasty startup that I just completed, Alan, which I think is fine value. Now, when he starts steaming up into wide receiver 4 land in startup value, then I think that's when you want to take a step back. But as a wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, I'm going to take shots. I think he's a good player. But a lot of sometimes talented guys don't always get that opportunity. We've seen that before.
We are very involved in the chat today. The chat is what we're all about. This is an AMA. Bortle RL, shout out to Twitch. Normally we have the one Twitch user. We have multiple now. Multiple Twitch. Apparently we're on fire on Twitch. Listen to this. I remember arguing with people many moons ago that Thomas Rawls was not worth a mid-first. People once upon a time could get a first-round pick in Dynasty for Thomas Rawls. There's another one. The point is there are so many Thomas Rawlses, I've lost count over the years. That's the thing. That's the thing. So, again, the question here is Dontayvion Wicks. I love the Packers right now, and I talked to my man Adam Krautwurst yesterday on the Mind of Mansion show, and he believes this is the best source of value in fantasy, period, is the Packers passing game, because it's like an ambiguous backfield, right? It's the same thing with the Steelers backfield. You could argue that Warren and Harris are both values because no one knows what the touch distribution is going to be. No one knows what the target distribution is going to be in Green Bay, except me. I know. It's gonna be Jaden Reed is going to be the target leader, but because of the target competition, he's not going to be able to, blot out the sun with targets. Then after him, it's going to be Christian Watson. Christian Watson, just because he was injured last year, doesn't mean he stopped being good. Okay, he's still their most explosive, big-time playmaker, ex-receiver on the outside. And then the third receiver there is Dontayvion Wicks, because Romeo Doubs is terrible. Like, he's not bad, he's terrible. Okay, so he is going to fade away. So the bet is, all you're betting on is Wicks better than Romeo Doubs. And that's how I see it playing out. Also, I see Musgrave outplaying Kraft. I don't think that's as ambiguous as people think. I think it's all about Musgrave there. I think those are going to be the four receivers. And the nice thing is that the running backs don't catch a lot of passes. Dillon and Jacobs aren't big pass catchers, so you get those four guys you can focus on. But because no one knows how the targets will be distributed, and there's this, lack of understanding about how bad Romeo Doubs is, then they all become values. Give me Watson. Give me Reed. Give me Wicks. Give me Musgrave. Of all of them, I think that the guy I think that's the best value right now is actually Musgrave.
I could see that. And Kraft is banged up to start OTA season as well. So Musgrave gets those valuable reps on the field. I'm with you. It's a Green Bay. Josh Larkey is also extremely bullish on them, taking a huge step forward offensively. Matt, I love how you use the term ambiguity. That's sort of how we saw a lot of our big hits over the past few years. I mean, we start talking about like chasing the next Puka Nacua. It's much easier to chase the next like Nico Collins, the next Hunter Renfrow, the player that sort of has that out of nowhere big time production. It could be from Green Bay this year. Like you talk about Nico last year, it was similar. It was like a wide receiver group where there was not anybody being bet on truly at the top. We see it a little bit improved with Jaden Reed, but Jaden Reed still being drafted as like a wide receiver 3, and then everything else is just below them. So I agree with you. Musgrave is definitely a target right now.
Yep. All right, guys. I think the answer all leads back to Jordan Love is defensible, even if you want to take him ahead of like Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert, right? I mean, getting a player on the way up in a dynasty startup, there's nothing wrong with that. I have no problem with that.
Another question, does Dallas re-sign Dak? Boy, oh boy, are we in? This is definitely May.
I have thoughts. I have actual. Let me just give you my quick take on that, and then I'll let you guys do the deeper analysis here. I don't think they're going to, guys. I think that Dak Prescott, here's just like more like a hot take prediction thing, is the next quarterback of the New York Giants next year. I mean, that's just kind of the vibe, and how open arms would the Giant fans be welcoming him. Whereas the Dallas, we'll try to get Shador Sanders. We'll Dion will come coach the team. Like you could see it, right? You could see it. I've heard that take out there before. It's not an original take, but it just feels like the Dak Prescott will not be the Cowboys. So when you see people stacking in Dynasty, the CD Dak stack, it's such a short-term thing in my judgment.
Theo?
I think that they're going to get boxed out in the market like a lot of these teams do where they have these grand plans. Shador Sanders is going to go ahead of where Dallas is going to be drafting. So they're going to have to do some I would imagine they would have to do a significant trade up. Now, there's mixed feelings on like where Shador Sanders is. I think Daniel Jeremiah was saying he views him as a late first round pick. A couple of these, draft experts don't necessarily view him there. I know Cody Carpentier and Matty Kiwoom and I all view him as a guy who should go probably inside the top 10. It's not a great draft class, and there's a lot of traits that Sanders has. So I don't know, Alan. I think at the end of the day, we've seen a lot of this is sort of, it happens all the time where you have a successful quarterback and the team maybe would like to replace him with a young quarterback, but they sort of box themselves out with success. Now there's offensive line injuries, offensive line changes in Dallas this offseason. Maybe they're not as good a bet to win as many games, but they're not falling flat. They're going to be a 500 team at worst.
Yeah, it's not that. It's that the expectation is that the Dallas Cowboys have to get to at least the conference championship game. If they don't, if they fall flat in the first round or second round, they're emotionally, psychologically going to want to blow it up. Mike McCarthy, Dak Prescott, because they've just had, decades now, and it's not all Dak Prescott's fault. I mean, this goes back to the Tony Romo era, right, of playoff failures.
Do you really think, what is the precedent for this?
I mean, Russell Wilson, they moved on. There's a lot of other. I mean, that was like a trade away, but there's other quarterbacks.
Well, Russell Wilson was 35 years old.
Dak's going to be what, 31, something
Kirk
like that. 30?
Cousins. You're thinking Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott are comparable?
I mean, Aaron Rodgers leaving after 2 MVP seasons. I know he was a little bit older. I'm just talking about there's teams that
39.
Kirk Cousins was in his peak. They just let him walk in Washington after franchise tagging him twice.
You're giving me Kirk Cousins? That's the example? This is a franchise quarterback with a $300 million franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
This is a superstar. You think they're going to let him walk?
It wouldn't
to go to what? To go to nothing? Without someone behind him? I mean, if they had somebody.
Trey Lance.
That was in the chat. Yes, Trey Lance. They could come. Get what?
He might be good. He might be good.
No, to go in the today's modern NFL, to go from all pro quarterback to nothing, to just open-ended, vapor. Really?
I mean, if they don't make the conference championship, I think everything's on the table right here.
Coach, I know you're. Here's the problem. You're viewing the Cowboys as this Jerry Jones vanity project, but according to the transactions I've been seeing, both in free agency and in the draft, they haven't been a Jerry Jones vanity project for at least 5 years. They have been making cool, cold, rational decisions on draft day in free agency. And the idea that Jerry is just going to come in and be petulant and be like, we got to move on. I'm sick of him. Like that. I don't think the organization is run that way anymore. Right. I think there are a lot more decision makers in the room that would come together as a committee. Usually when you see something like this happen, it's because there's a lone decision maker. Oftentimes it's one of those dictator coaches who just decides that out of desperation, they're going to make a crazy move, right? Remember when out of desperation, Bill O'Brien traded 3 first-rounders for Laramie Tunsil? Remember that? Like, that's the kind of crazy shit that a desperate dictator coach would do. What's happening in Dallas now is much more of a decision by committee where they have an analytics department now, and it's not. I can't see it. I just can't see it. They're too smart for that now as an organization. There's no way they would do that. You don't think that's a smart decision.
No, it would be a terrible decision.
It would be terrible.
Terrible. But, it's you made a good point because it wasn't too long ago that the Dallas Cowboys wanted to draft Johnny Manziel over Zach Martin, who was a 10-time Pro Bowler or something like that, right, guys?
Right. We're so far removed from that.
Right.
That's not it. Another question. Do you have another question, Theo?
Yeah, I got one from the Reddit. You want me to ask it, Theo?
Sure.
Yeah. Right. Theo Gremminger, thoughts on CJ Stroud? Will he ever elevate his rushing floor so he can firmly be with those elite quarterbacks for fantasy football?
I don't think he's ever going to get to that elite level, but I think he had 167 rushing yards last year, three rushing touchdowns. I think that the offense is going to improve this year, and I think he also is going to be more comfortable as an opportunistic scrambler, where he's going to take off and have a couple of chunk runs here and there. The 3 rushing touchdowns, it's a low bar for him to maintain or improve on. We can almost guarantee he's going to improve on the 167 rushing yards. So I don't think he's ever going to get to like the crazy 800 rushing yard season. But for a player that's capable of passing for as many touchdown passes and passing yards as Stroud is, Allen, if he could get up to 400 rushing yards a year and comfortably be at 400, 450, or at least 350, I mean, we're talking about something where that helps his fantasy floor, and I think we'd all take that. But it's just not really his game. At Ohio State, he was never really a rusher either. It's never been something he's just done continually. So I do think the Diggs and Mixon additions are going to help the entire offense. And again, it's going to open up opportunities for him to just be opportunistic and take chunk plays when they present themselves.
Where should he be going in Superflex startups? Is there a case that he's the QB1?
I've seen it happen.
I've seen it happen too. I'm not there, but I think based on his age and the quality, he's a locked top 5 pick right now in Superflex startups. You don't have the injury risk of Anthony Richardson. You don't have the unknown like we have with Caleb Williams, and I think certainly CJ Stroud. We talk about a lot of times the massive rookie year to year 2 leaps that have produced incredible fantasy results. We saw it with Patrick Mahomes. We saw it with Jalen Hurts. We certainly saw it with Lamar Jackson. I love taking shots on CJ Stroud right now. Can I take him ahead of Josh Allen? I can't, though, because it's just we've seen that ceiling, and Josh Allen's just automatic. But if you want to make an argument for him versus one of those other guys, even a Mahomes, even a Hurts, I can see it.
I've got an interesting little bit of trivia for you. CJ Stroud's 2 most passing attempt games happened in week 1 and week 2 of last season. I can guarantee you he's the first quarterback ever where in his rookie year he threw for 40-plus attempts in his first and second game and never matched those pass attempt numbers after that. That they would just open the offense up on day 1. In week 2, allowing him to throw for 436 air yards. That the coaches had seen enough in minicamp and training camp and preseason to give him such latitude is incredible. Like, if you're looking for signs that this guy's for real, and like it's just going to trend up, because I think that it's possible that he just keeps improving. And he's only 22 years old. The guy's 22 years old. And he's best comparable to Joe Burrow. But he doesn't have the kind of mileage that Joe Burrow has. He's younger than Joe Burrow. I think it's a pretty easy case to make. I'm typically more conservative.
This happened with
younger
Herbert,
players. But, man, in this case, I mean, his advanced metrics are so good. Top 5 in deep ball completion percentage last year. To go along, he was number 2 in production premium. So on any given down and distance, when you compare his performance to every other quarterback in the league, he was number 2 in the NFL, even though he had 107 throws under pressure, right? And he was top 5 in money throws. So it's like, wow, this is it. And he has the tactical scrambling ability. So, I mean, it could be so good. His protection rate wasn't that great. For a guy that has 2 stud left tackles, his protection rate of 82.9% on PlayerProfiler was only number 28 in the league. So the offensive line's only getting better. His receivers with Diggs only getting better. He's only going to get better. They could kick off the season with him throwing 40 times.
The only problem is we've done this before. We elevated Justin Herbert after his rookie year to like QB2. We were taking him over Patrick Mahomes, and it's just I would like to see it twice before I take him over some of those those Terminator guys, the Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he goes, if you're taking CJ Stroud ahead of them, look where Herbert is now. He's not even going in the first round of a lot of Dynasty Superflex startups. So I would think that that's a risk that I'm not willing to take on at pick 3. But, I understand why people will do it. But just remember the tale of Justin Herbert, who looked really good under all those metrics that Podfather was just citing. Theo, anything else about about Stroud before we move on?
No, I think that he's a great player, and I understand. I think Alan has a really solid take on it, that we don't want to put too much on him. And again, if the market is going to say that we have to take him at 2 overall, that might be a price that's difficult to pay.
And it's also, you can't really, like, if CJ Stroud is truly like the quarterback 3, can I add a high pick to him and get to Josh Allen? Probably not, right? Like, if you're the Josh Allen owner, Theo, and I come to you with Stroud and a first, are you going to do that deal? Maybe you will.
I think that the other argument would be, if I want CJ Stroud, and just really a dynasty theory argument is, if I get like the 102 and I view these guys as a big tier, I can look to trade down in a dynasty startup down to like the 105, and I know I'm going to end up with one of those. Not everybody wants to do it, but there's certain people do, Alan.
Yeah, it's like hard unless it's like, hey, for a 3rd round pick or something, nothing significant, right? It's not. Dynasty players are so much smarter than they used to be. I mean,
I think if you know the specific tiers of the format you're in, you can move around to potentially get another, without even talking about future rookie picks. Just being able to move up in specific spots in your draft, moving down, that can also work out too, Alan. Like flipping a 2nd for a 3rd, that sort of deal.
Another question we have on our AMA today, guys, is about the value and the projection moving forward of Garrett Wilson in Dynasty. We've seen him go everywhere last year. I saw him valued at wide receiver 3. Now he sits around 5 to 7-ish. Aaron Rodgers, there's people that I know that think that Aaron Rodgers might be done as far as like his elite level play. So where should we be valuing Garrett Wilson? Is this someone that we want to trade away? We want to buy into a little bit? Start with you, Theo. Garrett Wilson in Dynasty.
I think he's appropriately priced. He's being priced as wide receiver. I was in a startup that just finished, and he was wide receiver 6. Alan, I think you nailed it. He goes somewhere between wide receiver 6 and wide receiver like 9. I think that's fine. He's shown that he is a elite target earner. He has done this now last year, and he was able to succeed with bad quarterback play. I think that one other thing that's interesting is he won Offensive Rookie of the Year. There's been a huge track record of Offensive Rookies of the Year having at least 1 or 2 smash seasons in fantasy. If you go back and just look down the list, it continually happens. But I think he's fine. I don't think this is a player where we're low on him. I don't think this is a player where we're particularly high on him. I think he's actually appropriately priced. He's a player that, if you're worried, Alan, I think that he's a potential pivot up guy where I can trade Garrett Wilson plus to get to Jamar Chase, get to that level of player. Or if you're a little worried, you could pivot down and try to see if the Malik
Olave.
Yeah,
forget,
Chris,
the neighbors.
Neighbors and him are neck and neck.
Well, that's my point. Is so who's gonna, the neighbors that if you drafted neighbors, you're excited about neighbors, right? So
I'll push back on one thing though. Aaron Rodgers is not done. I don't think that's I don't think he's going to come on the field and embarrass himself. I think that he's actually going to be, by far and away, the best quarterback play that Garrett Wilson has ever seen. The quality of the targets, the moxie inside the red zone. I mean, Garrett Wilson has potential to give you a top 3 wide receiver season. And also the wide receiver 2 on his team, it's a little bit of a question mark as to how much of a target total Mike Williams can handle, how much of a impact Malachi Corley can make as a rookie. Breece Hall's going to get targets. That's a safe bet. But they did not improve at tight end. They didn't add a Brock Bowers. They didn't add a massive wide receiver 2 threat. Corley and Williams, nice role players, but certainly not a threat to a talent like Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall's going to get his targets. But will Breece Hall, again, like Breece Hall, I think we saw like a high-end amount of targets for him last year. I think if that continues, that's a win. Garrett Wilson's 150 targets or more, no doubt. Like, that's a huge safe bet.
Podfather, Theo had mentioned that they didn't upgrade at tight end. Do you think that the reason could be, and again, I'll stick with Garrett Wilson here for a second, but the Jets might like Tyler Conklin. Is that maybe after you talk about Garrett Wilson, someone that could be at least useful in some of our premium leagues or deeper leagues?
We like Tyler Conklin here. I said we're contractually obligated to always talk about Tyler Conklin when we talk about value tight ends when I was talking to Adam Krautwurst. Garrett Wilson is the wide receiver 5 or 6 in every ranking because he can't be ahead of Lamb, Jefferson, Chase, or St. Brown yet. Because he's only put up 12.5 fantasy points a game. Right? That's what he's been doing. The fact that a guy that's posting 2 consecutive seasons of 12 fantasy points a game is posted up there in our rankings tells you a lot. But it doesn't even tell you the full story. You go to the advanced metrics on Player Profiler, the greatest disparity that I've ever seen in expected fantasy points versus actual fantasy points per game is Garrett Wilson in 2022 and Garrett Wilson in 2023. Garrett Wilson in 2023 was expected to have, based on the air yards and target, 20.2 fantasy points per game. It was a difference of 7.61 fantasy points per game. Okay? Think about that. The quarterback was robbing him of 7.5 fantasy points per game. Per game. That's how you have 1,000 realized air yards. Okay? He was number 1 in the league in routes run, in route participation rate, top 10 in target share. Okay? And he was also top 10 in red zone targets. Okay, so his target share in the red zone was 35%. So this is someone that is getting targeted not only everywhere, but in the red zone. And yet, he only has 7 total career touchdowns. Even though the fantasy public knows he's a stud, they can't get over the fact fully that he has not produced. We talked about this with Kyren Williams. The production influences how people feel, even if they know in their heart that Kyren Williams is a guy. They look back at the fantasy point scoring, and it scrambles your brain. Garrett Wilson is the reason why I founded PlayerProfiler.com. It's for guys exactly like Garrett Wilson. The reason we do all this analytical work and we have all this horsepower behind something like the expected fantasy points metric is to show people how and why this guy is much more than his fantasy points production. It's why he is where he is on the Dynasty rankings. And you're not allowed to be surprised when, if Aaron Rodgers plays well, this guy joins that tier. Could even pass a Jamar Chase and an Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's very possible. I think especially Amon-Ra is going to have a total gangbusters season. I think that while Garrett Wilson is a little more explosive, that Amon-Ra is a little more technical and refined and also in a much better offense. Certainly high octane, fast-paced offense more than the Jets. So that's going to be the reason why Amon-Ra continues, because he's so young, to be ahead of Garrett Wilson. But Garrett Wilson can break into that top 4. Absolutely. And I say pick him ahead of ADP. I say this is a guy, you're going to be able to set it and forget it. He's now done it for 2 seasons. And if you're just looking at fantasy points, he hasn't done anything. You're like, why do I care about this guy? But what he's done in the advanced metrics and the analytics is astonishing. And he's like a warm blanket that you can just put on and you're like, oh my God. Like I got him. Like his ADP in single quarterback leagues is the 1-2 turn. Right? I mean, what a gift. It just goes to show your draft position in startups doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. In fact, give me the late round pick because I can get Garrett Wilson and I can come right back with, who knows?
Kyren Williams.
Matt has so many Garrett Wilson, Kyren Williams combination teams right now in best ball. It's unbelievable. He's never going to talk about it live on air.
Yeah, I could come back with a Jonathan Taylor, who's still 25 years old. There's so many guys you can come right back with, whether it be AJ Brown, guys in their super prime that are superstars. That picking at the 12-13 turn. Oh my God, it's great.
Yep. Next question, guys. We're moving on here. We got a question about Chris Godwin, who basically the dynasty market has forgotten about. He's not a pick anyone's excited. He's going down like the Tyler Lockett value path from a couple of years ago, meaning that he's just a boring player that's good.
Yeah.
But this year, there's some talk that he could be back in the slot again. I mean, is Chris Godwin just a boring good player that we want on our dynasty roster, Theo? Or is it somebody that you would take like an early second for?
I tweeted on it earlier today. Like Liam Cohen, the new offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay, has come out and said that Godwin is returning to the slot this year, made a point of saying that this is his natural position. We're going to stick him in the slot, period. We saw the slot rates from 2021. Chris Godwin finishes wide receiver 7 in points per game, and he was in the slot 57.5% of the time. Then in 2022, finishes wide receiver 15 in the slot 57.6% of the time. Last year, he drops to wide receiver 34. Matt Kelly, care to guess his slot percentage last year? We're 57,
24%.
32%. So he loses a significant portion of the slot, and the production goes way down. It was also sort of a perfect storm where Mike Evans was the preferred target of Baker Mayfield. I don't think that necessarily goes away, but Evans has been steamed up. But I do think right now Godwin has a great chance to beat his ADP.
Oh, yeah.
The target competition for him besides Evans is Jalen McMillan, a third-round wide receiver who we like, but again, it's a third-round wide receiver. And McMillan's probably a guy you'd want to see in the slot who he's going to have to play outside now. And then Trey Palmer, who we like at Player Profiler, but again, a guy that we are not projecting to be a huge target earner,
Super
but definitely
fast.
a deep
Great field stretcher. Perfect compliment for Godwin.
Hashtag better in best ball though, Matt. You know, and then Cade Otton, who is a Jag. You know, he plays in Tampa Bay, but he might as well be in Jacksonville because he's a Jag.
And
so
won't Rashad White and Bucky Irving suck up a ton of passes as well?
I think that we already saw it last year where Rashad White, if anything, I think there could be like Rashad White's floor. He's a 50 reception guy. Like we saw it as a rookie. It went up a little bit last year. Dave Canales is gone. Maybe there's slightly less targets for the running back. Maybe there's more for the slot receiver. So I just think it's a Godwin is definitely not a guy that's going to have a massive return. But I think that this is a guy who has a shot to be a low-end wide receiver too.
Would you trade pick 2.4 for Godwin, or would you sell him for 2.4? Does that seem like the right number in a rookie draft?
I think that's about right. I would be comfortable selling him if I was unless I was a win this year kind of build, then I'm comfortable selling Chris Godwin for the 2.4. I think that's a fine, but I think actually, Alan, you could get him for cheaper in a lot of leagues right now.
You don't have to give up that much. Yeah, we gave you the answer to the test on Chris Godwin. We said that when you're looking at veterans at a similar age, you'd prefer Godwin to Ridley. He's in a better situation with a better quarterback, and he's been more productive in his career, and he's just a better player. So he's better than Ridley, and then his quarterback's better than Ridley, and there's much more continuity. There's not this uncertainty about, Will Levis and Ridley mesh. Actually, when you look back at it, throughout his history, Baker Mayfield has been better throwing to the middle of the field than he has to the outside. So that's all that I think that skill match between Ridley and Mayfield just may be a year late in manifesting, and partly due to the fact they're going to move him into the slot. That's going to help. It's a smash. And in terms of picks, we have Godwin ahead of Pearsall. So wherever Pearsall goes, I'd rather have Godwin.
2.6, 2.7, yeah.
There you go. That's the answer.
Yep. How about Xavier Legette or Chris Godwin, guys? And not win now versus long term. Like, which one of those players do you want on your team?
Legette can't play. I mean, at least with Pearsall, he has that one-handed catch. Like, it was like...
Stop, Matt.
Matt's
theory on...
it was like he reached out, and it was like he caught the tip of the football. Right? He didn't see, sometimes these guys, they'll do a one-handed catch, but they'll kind of scoop it. They'll scoop it into their body. Right? That's a one-handed catch. But he just reached out up in the air and caught like this. the football, right? He caught it like that. Like, that's impressive. I have big hands, so. But anyway,
You know what they say? Big hands,
right?
big hog.
Well, yeah, big hands, big uterus.
I bet you do have a big hog. I bet you it scrapes on the floor a little bit when you walk. A little bit. I have that feeling that it's
I
like
can tell
very
you
thick.
that my early on when we had a family, my wife was like, "Okay, no more walking around in your boxers. That's not appropriate anymore. You can't. It's not just me anymore. You know what I mean?"
I think the breaking news here is that you wear boxers and not boxer briefs like the rest of the.
No, they're boxer
body.
briefs. Like
Okay.
no one wears boxers anymore. I think you just call them boxers now.
Right.
But yeah, I just think it was too revealing. She doesn't, three-legged husband. She doesn't want to, she's like, listen, man, no more. So
Gray sweatpants. Gray sweatpants.
yeah, inappropriate, right? So I was like, okay, so I'm a trainable husband, right? So that is the I forgot what the fuck we were talking about. Oh, Ricky Pearsall.
Right.
Jesus. Once we get into the penis talk, man. So yeah, at least Pearsall, I give him credit for having some raw material to be able to go out and actually develop into a productive receiver. I wouldn't hate having him on my team. I just hate his ADP. Xavier Leggett can't play. Xavier Leggett admitted that the Panthers told him he can't run routes before the draft. Right? This was like a third rounder that they took in the first round. Like, this is insane. Right? So you should never have any Leggett. He can't hurt you. Like, he's a developmental receiver, and developmental receivers drafted in the late first, early second round are almost always complete and utter zeros. And they can't hurt you, and they usually can't help you. It's dead weight on your roster. You never should draft him ever, 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 ever. Ever. It's such a gift that these guys are out there, these landmines that are in these rookie drafts. They're such a gift to us because we know that we don't have to trade up. We know to get the running back we want, to get a Blake Corum, we could just sit there and push the button, and we don't have to trade up because some uninformed league mate is going to go and say, oh, this guy's a big, strong receiver drafted in the first round. Guess I should draft him, right? And, like, it'd be one thing if the guy was this big-time producer in college, this dominant guy, but he just couldn't translate to the NFL like N'Keal Harry, right? I like N'Keal Harry. I had some N'Keal Harry. That kind of surprised me, right? That was surprised by that. But in the end of the day, this is a N'Keal Harry archetype. N'Keal Harry, Quentin Johnston. I mean, just say no.
Yep.
Zero
Theo.
of that guy. Zero. Is there, okay, Theo, who in rookie drafts do you have absolutely zero of? Because you've been in a lot of rookie drafts. Who do you have? Who do you look at your portfolio and you're like, I actually have never fucking drafted this guy, and I never will?
I can answer it for him.
Answer, Alan.
Spencer Rattler.
I don't have any Spencer Rattler.
See?
I have
don't-
one.
well,
I have one Xavier.
A little
Leggett
bit.
share
Can you
map.
get a guy with some draft capital to this
okay, I thought you
list?
meant up at the top because it's
Somebody,
called-
no, someone interesting.
Okay, well, you need to be in position to draft some of those guys. Whereas Rattler, you can take anytime you want. That's not Theo's type of pick.
So I actually took Xavier Leggett one time, Matt. I took him in one draft at the 211 in Superflex because I feel like I don't want to have zero of him. I can understand all the red flags, but at the end of the day, I think he's going to be the wide receiver too.
Can
He's
you
super
do us
athletic.
a favor? Can you remember this show?
Yes.
And can you write down the date and time when you drop him? To just we just want to come. I want to come full circle on this show. Can you please do that?
Jonathan Mingo 2.0, Matt.
Actually, you know what? Why am I saying that? That's wrong. You're way too smart. You're gonna wait for him to have one good game, and you're gonna trade him. I forgot who I was talking to. I forgot who I was talking to for a second. Let us know when you trade him. Let us know, please. Make a note when you trade him. Let us know.
I have some Ricky Pearsall though. I hope he's not just being drafted on one cat.
Anyone with was Leggett the closest you have to zero? Of anyone with draft capital?
Of the first round picks, he's the closest to zero. Of all the first round
What
guys,
about second and third rounders? Anyone?
Troy Franklin, I have 0 of, and I've done 14 drafts.
I have one share of Troy Franklin. Maybe 2 shares of Troy Franklin when he
It
fell
sounds
one
like
time.
Among Us. I don't have any Franklin either. It sounds like Among Us. Troy Franklin's that guy.
Yeah, we on
a lot of Jermaine Burton.
Oh yes, you got to have some Jermaine Burton.
I don't have Burton, but it's because people are now reaching up for him. He seems to be like I saw him go at 2.5 or 6 the other day.
Let them reach.
Yeah,
let them reach. Then you can draft Roman Wilson, bro.
Right. He's going like in the 3rd round now, and Polk is going in the 3rd round now. Those, so. How about Jalen Wright? He seems to be another one that people want. Are you getting much Jalen Wright? Because you have to pay the iron price of 2.5, 2.6, 2.7 to get
do
him
it anymore.
I
loved him. I wanted him bad. I
saw 112. This is the we talked about this before, Alan.
112?
112 in single for Jalen Wright. Jalen Wright is steaming up like you've never seen. Jalen Wright, it's funny because I ended up with some Jalen Wright, but it's like the steam continues. It's the highest drafted 4th round NFL draft pick running back we've ever seen.
Pierce went 111.
Dameon Pierce, I actually double checked this one, like for FFPC, well below of where Jalen Wright's ended up. Michael Carter's the one.
Yeah, Michael Carter, but he was also you're right around
that
there.
Was like Michael Carter was the one where he steamed up, but he had a strong Senior Bowl. People were saying there was literally no backfield competition. It's Tevin Coleman. Michael Carter is going to be in like this new San Francisco offense in on the Jets and catch a bunch of balls. And Carter did actually give us like a nice little 4 or 5 game stretch that year. Then he got hurt.
Do you remember a running back?
You traded him, right?
Yeah, a lot of people. You got to flip that Michael Carter before the Breece Hall pick.
Yeah, there was a running back about 10 years ago or so, or 8 years ago, named DeAndre Washington on the Raiders. That was like a late day 3 pick that was getting picked in the 1st round of drafts. Again, that might have been single quarterback going back a decade ago. But yeah, no, Dameon Pierce. I used to see him go 111, 2-1. I mean, it does happen, but that's the thing. Like they'll just draft over you or sign someone the next year. That's why you have to be careful with guys like that. Another question here, boys, is on the Miami backfield. Devon Achane, we all know the upside, but where you have to now take him inside the top 6, 7 running backs, is that a little bit of a dangerous pick? I know Podfather's immediately going to say, I'll whatever ADP Rashad White's at, I'll take him. But Achane, now that we're on the right thing here, is his ADP a little bit dangerous with one of your premium picks?
No. Devon Achane right now, you're getting a guy who, if we had to all sit here and say, who are the running backs who could average 20 points per game in the NFL this year? We're all putting Achane on that list.
But how many games?
A lot of these guys miss time, though. It's not just Devon Achane missed some time, but he was incredible when he's on the field. He had led the NFL in runs over 40 yards with only 100 and something carries. He had 5 of them. Breece Hall was number 2 on that list. He had like 225 of them. Like Devon Achane is one of the most explosive players we've ever seen. I think that the receiving upside is higher in year 2. We've seen it where down the stretch you saw a couple of games where they actually targeted him 6-7 times. He's really, really good. He's in the perfect system, and he could outscore the premium running backs. There's the big 4 running backs. If you're going to pick one guy outside of that big 4 who could outscore those guys this year, Devon Achane is it. So, like, I think that the Jalen Wright pick, the Raheem Mostert being re-signed, has sort of actually created a sort of a buying window for Devon Achane. He's not the one I'm fading. He's the one that I'm taking at a price that is pretty cheap for what we've actually seen on the field.
Well, like, in terms of a season of production, the better bet would be Barkley on the Eagles. Like if you're trying to get a guy that's going to break into the top 4, it would be Barkley.
Yeah. Okay. For one season, I think that Barkley, and again, Barkley's going ahead of Devon Achane in like on like best ball drafts right now. So I hear you. Barkley, the touchdown upside in Philly is immense, and you'd have to bet on him.
He's been on a shitty team for his whole career.
Yeah.
And before that, he was on Penn State.
Is there any danger of the tush push cucking Barkley's touchdowns there? though. That's I mean, that's really what it's going to be. It's like if there's
Alan, you completely unnecessary cuck reference.
Why
on the pod.
did you
It's
see?
completely
The thing
unnecessary.
is, like, you used cuck there as a verb, and
what's not
I understand that.
my favorite category.
I understand what you're saying when you use a word like cuck in that scenario. That it basically, you're just saying that something would subvert something else, but then you're putting it in like a cuck context. You're putting it in like you're making it sexual.
Yes,
is what you're doing.
You're sexualizing.
Then you're also implying that Saquon Barkley is weak. And
that's
that
a good point.
Jalen Hurts is strong.
No, that's a good point.
And so these loaded terms, man, that you use just to get sexual. It's such an Allen thing. I mean, we get what you're saying, dude, but you can also just speak plain English and also just communicate like a normal person. That's also an option.
This is normal in my world. You don't know where I came from. you got
an option on any given show, Alan. You have the option of being normal.
I mean, I'm just walking down like Mr. Magoo on the street. This is.
I have a question here, which is related to this. Podfather Nate List reunion coming soon.
I see a lot of those comments.
I have a prediction to make. That yes. I have a prediction to make that is coming soon. Nate List and I talked. Nate called me this past weekend. It was a very good conversation. We talked a lot about a lot of things.
How long was the conversation?
It was as long as he had. He had to go to a soccer practice or something. But I was I wasn't going to get off the phone. Like, I was just enjoying every minute of it.
That sounds like it was like under a minute. It sounds like a Theo conversation.
No, it was a great.
He's always got to go.
Conversation. But here's the thing with these things, right? My style with these kinds of things is the moment he calls me, I just launch into whatever talking point I had in my mind that was related to him that might have been relevant at the time. And so there was no, getting to know you, right? There were no formalities, right? There was no how you doing. There was no, it's been a while. No awkward. I don't do the awkward sort of like, hey, we need to start the engine of this conversation, like first 30 seconds. What I do is I just assume that, hey, we're good, and I launch into whatever would be a fun topic of conversation, and it ended up being great. So I think we're in a very good place now. I'm very happy. And so, yeah, things are good. And I think that you're not allowed to be surprised when eventually there's a fourth window here, and it is Nate. I can see it.
Yeah, I think people just want the Nate Podfather reunion, though. Like, I think that show just needs to be you two.
Maybe, but I will tell you from a strategy standpoint that I actually think it would be easier for him to just come on as a fourth guy than
that's why
him to sit down with me, and I think that would imply more pressure. The problem that I think Nate is having right now is that he just doesn't have the time to be as informed as he had been in the past, and I think talking to him in previously, that was always an underlying pressure point that he was having to deal with, that he felt that he had to elevate himself for every show. And life eventually made that very difficult, and it put a lot of pressure on him. Whereas the difference is you are in the industry, right? Alan, you are in the business. You don't have any pressure to know the ins and outs of Xavier Legette's ADP, right? Like, you've been in tons of drafts, you've been writing, exactly. But if I throw a name out, like a fringe name out there, you're gonna know who he is. Theo's going to know who he is. But someone who's not full-time in the business, it becomes a little more of a pressure point. And so, I'm going to feel it out, see what happens. Maybe he comes on as a fourth member of this show for one episode. Maybe he and I sit down and do a Mind of Mansion. Maybe we do something else. I don't know. But I'm open to anything, but I'm going to feel him out.
That might actually be the solution, right? Because just the pressure of the Sonic Truth brand under there might make him feel uncomfortable. But if he does it on Mind of Mansion, he knows he's a guest. He knows you'll take care of him. Hey, look, Theo and I don't speak for Theo, but I think I know Theo well enough to know that we're down for whatever. We'll give you guys your room, or we'll happily sit in.
100%. Or I could host a Dynasty Life with you and Nate, throwing questions at both of you guys.
There's so many different formats we can do because this channel now has so many different types of shows. It makes me so proud.
Nate on Wake and Take.
Dynasty Life, by the way, if you haven't tuned into Dynasty Life yet, you should. It's on the podcast feed. It is on YouTube. When I look at the numbers, I am deep into the numbers, as you probably understand. If you think I understand the advanced metrics of Garrett Wilson, imagine how much I know about the advanced metrics of our shows. Okay? Dynasty Life is the best performing news show we've ever done. Dynasty Life is killing it. It is actually the one thing that is most impressive about Dynasty Life is it is commanding its own audience. You've got people searching for it on their podcatcher and subscribing to Dynasty Life as a standalone show, not just listening to it in our Player Profiler feed. And I see that, and it makes me very proud that Theo and Yvette. Theo is here because of Nate. Theo was a writer for Breakout Finder, working with Nate directly before he ever came onto my radar.
Nate and Ryan Lopes. I got to always shout out Ryan Lopes, who is still my guy. But yeah, those guys were, they got me in here. So big shout out to Nate.
This is the beauty of these AMAs, where we can take questions about Calvin Ridley, but we can also take questions about Nate Liss.
I love Nate, man. I used to enjoy when he was on the show. And obviously I enjoy when there was a lot of tension between you for entertainment purposes, but I know Nate enough to care. I want him to feel good and comfortable. So whatever he wants, whatever gets him back on the network, I rubber stamp that.
So people in the chat believe people in the chat believe this is what's actually going to happen, where Nate will join the show, okay, and Alan won't really be part of it. Alan's just going to sort of slink away into the corner and jerk off.
Yeah, that's what a cuckold is, right? I would be turned on by that a little bit.
Alan, is there a chair facing your bed in the bedroom right now?
Yeah. Yeah,
you gotta have a chair.
Keep my jeans
Alan's
on.
Just he's gonna slowly back away from the mic, like
pull it out between the jeans, so the zipper sort of like chafes it a little bit, little pain, little everything.
Shout out to the chat is so lit today, guys. We're missing a lot of this, but shout out to our friends from Dynasty Trades in 5. They're here. Toronto Dave, Senior Football. This is awesome.
Okay, let's get back to Kyren Williams. Depeche Patel. No, this is a real question. I'm allowed to do this. If I drive a player taken to the ground, I'm allowed to continue to spin around as long as their fresh questions continue to be asked about it. So Depeche Patel asked, what's the ideal trade return for Kyren Williams? If he has a win now team, single quarterback.
Jonathan Brooks.
He's getting out of his Kyren Williams. Oh, my God, that would be a smash.
Right. Trey Benson. Take it.
Just late first, just early second?
201.
I think in a league like an FFPC, based on where Kyren Williams is getting drafted in redraft and the expectations for him this year, there's going to be somebody in your league that's going to pay you a first and a third in a single QB setting.
But
if
Theo,
it's one of these super...
You would take Trey Benson for him straight up at this point?
I would want to squeeze a little bit more out of the other manager.
Well, that's the thing. It's why there's a go to the rankings. You can go to our draft planner. You can check out our ADP tracker, all of our advanced tools on the Dynasty Deluxe package. But you also want to tune in because there's some game theory involved here. Yes, we think that Benson, of course, Trey Benson, who's better in every way on a better offense, bigger, literally has every attribute, bigger, better, faster, stronger, more efficient than Kyren Williams. Of course, even younger. Of course you would want him over Kyren Williams. That's not even a question. But because the market for Kyren Williams is so broken and so wrong and so irrational, you actually wouldn't do that. You wouldn't take the 112 knowing you can get Trey Benson. Now, you can't get Trey Benson there in single quarterback. I'm thinking superflex, and I apologize to Depeche. This is more of a single quarterback question. So wherever you think you could get Trey Benson, go a pick ahead of that, right? So if you're looking at single quarterback leagues, Trey Benson is going, 109 in single quarterback? Let's
Sounds
say.
about right.
Sounds
about
right.
right.
It was 109, I
About
think, where I've seen him. So
107,
109.
108.
So you asked for the 108 or the 107 and a third.
And I think that if you're going to go Trey Benson route, Alan, and if it's a win now team, I could squeeze out Trey Benson, and I would offer them Kyren Williams and a 2025 fourth for Trey Benson and a 2025 second, and I'd have 2 bullets. I think that kind of deal, that a lot of people don't want to trade their future first. Maybe they got Trey Benson at the end of the first, early second. That would be like a double bet to try to get out of it if you want to try to get out of it.
With this latest news, though, Theo, Kyren Williams' value has never been lower before than it is right now. Like today. I'm not saying in a week and now it can't rebound a little bit.
Well, it's going lower because apparently this is the foot that he had the surgery on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So he had a big time foot injury. I don't know if it was it the Liz Frank?
How about this? I got a trade for you right here. How
I
about
think so? It might be irritation of the screws.
Yeah. Theo, Rashee Rice for Kyren Williams. Does that sound like a fair trade in Dynasty that can actually happen? I know what side we want, but let's say that Rice is looming suspension, right? Possibly, maybe even not going to happen. Is that a fair trade in Dynasty?
I think if everything being equal, I'm going to go Rashee Rice in that scenario. But I think that you could get a little bit more than Rashee Rice right now. Despite the foot, I don't think this is I'm seeing it in best ball drafts where people are not betting on this foot being something massively significant. We're not seeing him shoot down. This is not some huge correction. And again, I think he'll be back for training camp. This is more of are we fading Kyren Williams, the player, rather than the injury?
The blinking concerning light from Toronto Dave.
Toronto Dave, I'm doing something with Toronto Dave in the chat I've never done, which is just constantly turning his comment on and off, blinking on and off, just flashing. We're flashing this comment, flashing it constantly. Toronto Dave said it all. The foot is concerning. Yes, Dave, it is concerning.
He's right.
It is. It is a concern. It's a bigger concern than the coach speak accuracy rating of Sean McVay, all understood, right? He said it's a little thing. It's a nothing burger. It's just a little irritation of the screws of a previously surgically repaired foot that now in the off season, when he hasn't played football in 3 months or 4 months, is bothering him. But during the football season, I'm sure it'll be just fine. Yeah. He's going to be fine, guys. Just because he's small and he can't avoid contact and he can't pass block, that's not a reason that he's not going to be on the field for an 80% snap share and get all the opportunities like he did last year. I can't believe you guys are worried about him.
Yeah, Theo, right, but I'm saying if that was the best deal you could have right now, would be Kyren for Benson, and you want to get it out of Kyren, would you just hold and wait? It sounds like you might, or would you take Benson if there's the best offer?
I would try to hold and wait. I really like Trey Benson, but again, I think I can get more Allen. I feel like that would be selling. Yeah.
So Depeche has decided that he's going to do a master stroke deal. He's going to get the 109, which is going to be Trey Benson plus Joe Mixon for Kyren Williams.
He wants to acquire Kyren Williams?
No, he's offering.
It sounds like he's trying to acquire.
He's trying to acquire.
Hold on a second. You're right. I just got this backwards. I
think
here's the thing.
Depeche,
here's how my brain works. I can't process someone going so far in the wrong direction as he must. I process it as him with a typo. Like it has to be a typo because Joe Mixon is going to outproduce Kyren Williams for the remainder of their careers. From this point forward, Joe Mixon will score more fantasy points than Kyren Williams. So then you're getting the 109 on top of that. Like that's the move. So hopefully, I'm assuming Depeche mode. I really hope that you had that backwards and it was a typo.
Yeah,
but you agree though. If you had Kyren Williams and someone offered you the 109 and Joe Mixon, you would accept that.
Yeah, the 112 and superflex.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
how my brain thinks. But yeah, it's obviously
Easily.
it's a smash. It's
Obviously,
a smash.
smash.
You got a double bet there where Mixon could outscore him and the 109 could be worth more. It's a smash. Smash accept. Easy one.
Well, let me ask you this.
So here's the thing, right? So here's my position on this. Here's why. How could you Kyren Williams is so much younger than Joe Mixon? Listen, do you realize how many running backs like a Thomas Rawls produce for a season or a half a season or never heard from again? What I know is that Joe Mixon is teed up this year in a big, big way. The fact that Kyren Williams goes before Joe Mixon in seasonal leagues doesn't make sense to me.
I thought you were going to end the podcast when you said a big, big way. I thought that was it. That was usually your big.
It should have been, but again, if I don't have my finger on the button, if I do that, so we've had this conversation. This is a Groundhog Day situation. We've had this conversation where if I do one of those big crescendo moments, but I don't have my finger on the button because it's just, an improvisational, great take by me, then we can't go out on it because I don't have my finger on the button. So if I predetermine it, right? Sometimes it's premeditated, and then I have my finger on the button, and I do it, and I crescendo, and then boom, we go out on it, and it's great.
I don't know.
But here's the thing, though, which you have to understand is the other reason is I'm seeing a lot of chatter in the chat on Reddit. Everyone, they need us to talk Brian Robinson. They keep bringing
You got to give your Brian Robinson take. You can't end another show.
Okay, so finally, then we have time because there's time left. Look at the clock. We have plenty of time left. Here's what I think about Brian Robinson. Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.